I am originally from Russia and I am a native speaker of the Russian language. As a Russian, I've always found other Slavic languages to be very interesting and I've always loved comparing them to my own in videos. However, every single time that I make a video about Slavic languages now, I get a few strange people leaving comments on them telling me that Russian is actually not a Slavic language. Russian is not Slavic, it has Slavic part absorbed but it is not Slavic. Ukrainian can understand Polak, Slovakian or North Macedonian person, but Russian cannot understand anyone. Total BS. Russian is not Slavic. Russian is Turkic Esperanto. Russian is not Slavic, it just sounds Slavic. Russian is not a Slavic language. Russian is not a Slavic language. Or here's for example one that I got on my vlog from Poland. So much Slav talk for not a so Slav country. Polish is not a Slavic country and neither is it a Slavic language. Close enough though, gotta love it. So yes guys, absolute truth. I'm sorry guys, I guess I've been exposed. I also feel bad for the Polish people watching this video right now. Now we know that Polish is not even a Slavic language either. Sorry folks, somebody in the YouTube comment section said so it must be true. Now of course, in the real world, it is obviously agreed by the entirety of the linguistic community that Russian is an East Slavic language that belongs to the Balto-Slavic branch of the Indo-European language family. This is simply just a fact. But why do so many people disagree with this qualification? Why do people claim that Russian is a Finno-Ugric, Uralic, or even a Turkic language these days? And why do some people even say that Russian is a fake language that was invented? Hey there people, it is your boy Roman, your favorite neighborhood Russian, and in today's video, we'll get down to the bottom of the claim that Russian is actually not a Slavic language. Truth bombs are going to be dropped guys, you are simply not ready for this, your babushka is going to be shocked. Now speaking of babushkas though, by the way, before we begin I want to talk about this right here, which is the Babushka plushie that I just released in collaboration with Makeship. It is a plush toy that is meant to resemble the classic character of the Eastern European grandma. She has a headscarf and old-timey clothes, and I actually designed this whole thing myself and Makeship turned my design into a reality. I wanted the toy to resemble something wholesome and remind you of home, so if you guys are interested in getting yourself a nice little Eastern European souvenir, and if you want to bring that cozy vibe to your apartment, then go over to the link down in the description to the Makeship website and get yourself one of these bad boys. These are only going to be available for a limited time only, so do not miss out. And also if you get one, you support what I do over here on this channel. So yeah, Babushka plushie, go get it. Now let's get back to the video. You sit, okay? You sit. Okay, so why do even people make this claim in the first place, that Russian is not actually Slavic? To put it short, it's because these days a lot of people don't like Russia and the Russian propaganda and they kinda want to insult it. Many Eastern European countries such as the Baltics, Poland, Czechia, Georgia and so on had a lot of dark history with Russia, and obviously with the Ukraine war going on, a lot of Ukrainians don't like Russia for obvious reasons. Since the Russian propaganda and Vladimir Putin literally claim that Ukraine is a fake country that was invented by Vladimir Lenin, and that the entire Ukrainian identity and culture is basically fake, and because Z-pro-Putin Russians like to say that Ukrainian is not even a real language and is just a funny variant of Russian, a lot of Ukrainians basically start responding with the exact same energy, when in reality saying that Russian is not a Slavic language is as ridiculous as saying that Ukrainian is just a dialect of Russian. But for some people it actually goes way deeper than that. Not of the same roots, the Ukrainian language as a nation is older than Russia. It is necessary to know history before trying to compare a handful of nations that created Muscovy and the nation of Ukrainians that has been living for centuries. Our roots begin with the Tripilian culture and continue to this day, and the Muscovites, when they were still under the Khan, continue to this day under Putin. The same with the language, we had our own, and Russia gathered a little from the peoples and created a slightly easier language for itself to perceive. Therefore, summing up, the Russian language will be similar to Ukrainian words, because they borrowed those words. So yeah, this is actually a whole thing. In Ukraine and Russia, there's always been a debate about who is the real descendant of the Kievan Rus. And it is a common opinion within some people in Ukraine that Ukraine is actually the rightful Rus and the only Rus, and that Russia has had no relation to Rus whatsoever and was actually mainly influenced by the rule of the Golden Horde. So the Mongols. This is exactly why you see so many Ukrainians call Russians Muscovites online, because the whole idea is that Russians actually stole the name Rus, and therefore they do not even deserve to be called Russians. So basically the idea is that the Ukrainians are actually the real Hyperborean Viking Aryans, you know, the real true Slavs of the Rus, and the Russians are just a bunch of random peoples, essentially a huge Mongol horde that has nothing to do with Western civilization. Don't call yourself Slavic. You speak a Slavic language, but ethnically you are Finno-Ugric. Don't taint the name of good Polish and Ukrainian people who are true Slavic by claiming something such as Russians are Slavic. I mean, at least I guess he says that Russian is a Slavic language, so that's cool, but you get it, right? And look, while there is actually some truth to the claim that Russia was heavily influenced by the Mongol yoke, and while I do understand that a lot of people have genuine reasons to dislike Russia, I just think it's extremely corny, honestly. You know, it gives off massive fuck off, we don't like your kind here vibes, okay? And also it's low-key just racist, because the whole idea here is that Russians are not really Slavic and therefore they are inferior. Which by logic means that these people think that non-Slavs are inferior to Slavs. Which is not great, right? And this is also why sometimes you see Russians being called Mardva or Moksha on the internet as an insult. These are literally just names of indigenous people living in Russia. So if you claim to oppose Russian imperialism and if you stand with the people that are oppressed by Russia, why are you using the names of indigenous nations as an insult? It doesn't really make much sense to me. Look, I'm all for fighting Russian propaganda and stuff, but I believe that insulting indigenous people and minorities in Russia is probably not the best way to do it. And essentially the same exact logic also extends to the Russian language, which many people claim to be anything but Slavic. Here are some more good ones from my comments. So yeah, once again, we had this guy here saying that Russian is Turkic Esperanto, classic. Russian language is not even Slavic, no it is. 60% of the Russian words are stolen from Finno-Ugric language, just complete nonsense. And here's my favorite actually. Russian is a Slavic language? It's an old Bulgaric Surgic with Western and Turkic terminology, to which I responded saying English is Germanic, it's an old Celtic Surgic with Latin and French terminology. I think I cooked his ass right here, I'm not gonna lie. Surgic, by the way, is a language that is a mix of Russian and Ukrainian that is spoken in Ukraine. And this guy here is basically saying that Russian is a fake language that just combined a bunch of languages together. Russian comes from the Old Slavonic language, which was introduced by Kievan colonizers to Muscovites, who were essentially Finno-Ugric. Their language then mixed with Mongolian, reflecting Muscovy's century-long Mongol occupation, and hence has very few similarities with the other Eastern Slavic languages. That is why Russian has so many loanwords that are so different from typical Slavic words. For example, check these words in Belarusian, Ukrainian, Polish, Slovak, Czech. And here he lists some words that are supposed to be different, and now check them in Russian, surprise, surprise. Alright, so let's get down to it. Are these people actually right? No guys. Once again, let's snap back to reality a little bit. No, Russian is not a Finno-Ugric, Uralic, or a Turkic language. Russian has absolutely zero relation to any of these languages because these languages don't even belong to the Indo-European language family. The Indo-European language family is divided into several branches. Germanic, Italic, Indo-Iranian, Balto-Slavic, and so on, just to name a few. All of these very different languages actually come from the same root and have a common ancestor. And at the same time, Russian has no common ancestor with Finno-Ugric or Turkic languages. So linguistically, Russian is actually way more closely related to French and Hindi, for example, than it is to Turkish or Hungarian. And just as an objective fact, by being a part of the Slavic language family, Russian has some level of mutual intelligibility with pretty much any other Slavic language. It may be easier with some languages than others, but there's always a basic level of understanding. This is the exact reason why if you're from, let's say, Poland or Slovakia, you can vaguely understand a lot of words and even sentences sometimes in Russian without learning it, because all of these languages have a common ancestor. And if Russian really was a Turkic language, then speakers of, let's say, Turkish or Uzbek or Azerbaijani would be able to understand quite a little bit of Russian without ever learning it. Or if Russian was really Finno-Ugric, then right now I should be able to understand basic words and phrases in Finnish and Estonian, but I have absolutely zero idea. But the truth is that the more you expose yourself to a language, the bigger are your chances of understanding it. I mean, this is pretty much how I actually learned English when I was a regular Russian kid. I just watched a lot of YouTube videos, I played video games, I listened to music, and I really kind of immersed myself in English. As it turns out, watching content can be a great way to learn a language, and I think it could be even better with a tool like LingoPie, the creators of which are kindly sponsoring this video. LingoPie is a subscription-based video streaming platform that was specifically designed for language learning. It allows you to watch over 3,000 TV shows and movies in 13 different languages while also allowing you to study them. Let's imagine that I'm studying Russian. Here I am, for example, watching a TV show in Russian with double subtitles in both English and Russian. If I see a new word that I do not know, I can click on it and immediately get a translation. Plus, the word gets automatically added to a list so I can study it and look at it later. Not only that, but you also get a transcription of the entire video video on the side, where you can also click on any word and save it. Even the video playback has tools in it that make it easier for you to study words and sentences. Since I live in Portugal, I also watch some content in Portuguese on the platform as well, and it works just as great. For example, Portuguese with Leo helped me learn at least 15 new words. And later, when you finish watching something, you can actually go back and take a special test designed just for you based on the content that you just watched and the words that you highlighted. There's even a feature that allows you to learn a language by listening to music. For example, you can learn Russian by listening to Молчат дома and really figure out why these Eastern Europeans are so depressed. And what can I say, I really wish there was a tool like this when I was studying English myself by watching a ton of content on the internet. So if you would like to try out this new language learning experience, then go over to link down in the description and start your free 7-day trial on LingoPie. Plus, you also get a 55% discount. Huge thanks to LingoPie for sponsoring this video, and let's get right back into it. So yes, if you actually took your time to learn Russian, I think you'd quickly realize that it is a Slavic language that does share a common ancestry, similar morphology, and overall logic with any other Slavic language out there. Obviously, another thing that also connects Russian to other Slavic languages is the vocabulary. Now again, this right here is yet another part where a lot of people like to make the point that since the Russian language has loanwords from Mongolian, Tatar, Turkish and so on, right, it is actually not a Slavic language. Because obviously every other Slavic language only uses Slavic words, right? I'm joking, by the way, there's no languages that actually have 0 loanwords in this world. So once again, this guy right here said that 60% of Russian words are taken from Finno-Ugric languages actually. And this one once again said that, for example, if you check these words in a bunch of Slavic languages, they're similar. Onion, red, work, sugar, second hour building, thank you, towel, step. And now check them in Russian, surprise, surprise. So once again, truth, new guys, has been proven once again that Russian is not Slavic. And in order to prove this point, actually, often people like to share these kinds of images, which essentially are tables that compare Slavic languages and the words in them between each other, right? And this right actually proves that Russian is different. So, for example, the word for red in Russian is krasny, while in Ukrainian is червоный, Belarusian червоный, Polish червоный, Slovak червеный, Czech червеный, and so on. Or once again, the word for hour in Russian is час, in Ukrainian година, in Belarusian hadzina, Polish godzina, Slovak hodina, Czech hodina, so you get it, right? And what can I say, guys? I cannot fight with the facts. I guess my whole video is horseshit, and this right here really does prove that Russian is not a Slavic language. Yes, it is great proof, except that we can actually create a table like this for pretty much any other Slavic language and find enough oddities that will prove that any other Slavic language is actually not Slavic because it has some different words. Here's for example another table which compares Ukrainian, Russian, and a few other Slavic languages, except that in this one, Ukrainian is the odd one out. For example, the word for morning in Russian is utro. In Bulgarian it's sutrinta, Slovenian zjutraj, in Serbian it's jutro, in Croatian it's ujutro, and in Ukrainian it's ranok. Or for example, the word for onion. In Russian it's luk, Bulgarian luk, Slovenian lok, Serbian and Croatian luk, and in Ukrainian it's tsibuля. Wow guys, I mean, I cannot believe it. This is crazy. So I guess this table right here actually proves that Ukrainian is not a Slavic language, and I think all of us, we need to start running around and commenting this in every comment section now, right? Well, not quite. This is just another example of a table that is created to push a narrative. In the first table, where Russian is the odd one out, it's not only been compared to Ukrainian and Belarusian, but also actually to West Slavic languages like Polish, Slovak, and Czech. And these languages have a bigger difference with Russian than they have with Ukrainian or Belarusian, because Ukrainian and Belarusian were influenced a lot more by Polish and other West Slavic languages throughout history. This is why the words in these languages are similar, and Russian is the only odd one out. And in the second table that we looked at, where the Ukrainian is the odd one out, apart from being compared to Russian, it's also been compared to South Slavic languages, such as Bulgarian, Slovenian, Serbian, and Croatian. And the comparison here is very convenient because the South Slavic languages have more similarities with Russian than Ukrainian because they were influenced more by Old Church Slavonic, just like Russian was. And this is why the words in Ukrainian are different. It is not because Ukrainian is actually un-Slavic or because Russian is actually un-Slavic. These are simply just different languages, and the whole point of these kinds of tables is essentially to create confusion, to push a narrative. It is essentially linguistic rage bait. The point that I'm trying to make is that all these languages are different because time, geography, and history shape them to be that way. All Slavic languages used to be one at a certain point, but then with the migration and people spreading throughout Europe, they started drifting apart. This is why today we have three branches of the Slavic languages, the East, the South, and the West. All the languages of the East Slavic branch, Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian, also were one language at a certain point, but also drifted away from each other due to historic factors. Modern Ukrainian and Belarusian came from a language that linguists now describe as Ruthenian, or less politically correct West Russian, but the word Russian here means of the Rus, not of Russia essentially. And this Ruthenian language was the language of the West Rus, many lands of which later became part of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This is exactly where the similarity of Ukrainian and Belarusian to West Slavic languages comes from. The modern Russian language, on the other hand, developed in the Grand Duchy of Moscow, and was heavily influenced by religious texts in Old Bulgarian and Old Church Slavonic, which is why Russian is a little bit different now. Basically, languages just grow apart and start going through a lot of changes. And the fact that the Russian, the Belarusian, and the Ukrainian languages are very similar but yet very different does not mean that any of these three languages are like more fake or less fake than others. And it does not mean that Ukrainian came from Russian or Russian came from Ukrainian or any of this fucking nonsense. But I guess at the end of the day, who really gives a shit what actual linguists and people who study languages their whole life have to say? No, I definitely think that the people in the YouTube comments section who have zero idea about what a language family even is, these people are definitely correct with their insane classifications and theories about languages. And the thing is, even if we present a person like this with all the facts and evidence, if they're already convinced if they really want Russian to not be Slavic, they will find a way to make Russian not Slavic. And they will continue to spread linguistic rage baits in the comments. And who am I really to shatter their worldview, right? I guess these people just really want to believe that since Russian uses a Turkish word for, describing a hat, shapka, for example, right? That clearly means that Russian is actually Turkic Esperanto. I guess English is just not a Germanic language then, right? Because it has a lot of borrowings from French and Latin and other Romance languages, right? To the point where the Germanic vocabulary is kind of barely used. Yep, guys, I'd say the case is closed. English doesn't sound like German, so it has to be something else. I guess English is actually French, guys. So, English people, you can cry about it, your beloved language of Byron and Shakespeare is actually just a poor ripoff of French. I'm sorry, guys, I know it sounds harsh, but this is just the truth. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to talk about this nonsensical claim that Russian is actually not a Slavic language and try to bust some myths a little bit. And look, at the end of the day, once again, I do understand why people say stuff like this. People are just not really fond of Russia these days, and people just want to kind of rage bait Russians into responding. It's kind of just a way to be edgy, and I get it. Especially when Russia is like actively denying the statehood of Ukraine and the right of Ukraine to be like a separate culture with a separate language and stuff. Trust me, I get it, but I just do not believe that the best way to fight misinformation is just to spread more misinformation and nonsense. But yeah, guys, I guess that is going to be pretty much it for today's video though. Let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. I'm sure the comments underneath this video are going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much once again for watching this video, and if you guys would like to support me additionally, that is financially, well, first of all, get the Babushka plushie while they're still available, and also, you guys can either buy me a coffee or become a YouTube channel member. Thank you, lovely people, once again for watching this video, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.